Hey everyone, welcome back to our Hands-on with Maxon Beginners Cinema 4D workshop in version 25. I am joined, as always, with my good friend Matt. How's it going, Matt?
It's all right, thank you very much. We actually have some sunshine here in the UK for once, so
I
we should
know,
enjoy this.
yes, from sunny old England. So yeah, also let us know where you're from, guys. It's always nice to know which parts of the globe everyone's joining us from. So, just a little recap in case anyone wasn't here last week or hasn't caught the recording yet on YouTube. The idea of this hands-on workshop is to get you guys comfortable in Cinema 4D in just 6 weeks. So, we broke this down into 6 main kind of disciplines inside of Cinema 4D, and we're going to be spreading this all over the next kind of 6 weeks. So last week, if you weren't there, it was all to do with getting started inside of Cinema 4D. So we had a look at the brand new UI in 25, as well as how to make things inside of Cinema 4D. So we looked at primitives and we looked at deformers and we made our robot guy. And so if you guys haven't seen that, let us know because it's actually public on our Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. So you can check it out there, and we've got project files and all that kind of fun stuff. So today is week 2 or part 2, which is all to do with modeling. So we're going to look at loads of different types of modeling like box, SDS and spline modeling. If you don't know what those things are, don't worry. Over the next 2 hours, we'll be going through them. Next week, we're going to start to make things look really nice, looking at lighting and creating our own materials from scratch. Weeks 4 and 5 is when things start to get really kind of interesting and into kind of the really cool tools inside of Cinema 4D with animation and dynamics and MoGraph. And then we're going to round it all off with just a whole load on rendering in week 6. So
Just want to say modeling's interesting too. Modelling is super interesting.
I'm not very good at it, so I'm going to be kind of basically watching you, because if no one knows or if people aren't aware of this, Matt is basically the modeling expert, if I'm allowed to say that, Matt.
Ugh.
So this is definitely your kind of probably one of your favorite things in Cinema 4D, right?
This is the thing I enjoy doing the most. I'm a modeler. As it got to a point when I was much younger that when I
When
was
I
doing
was a
so
boy.
much. Yeah, when I was a lad, it's so much stuff in Cinema 4D and just kind of really absorbing stuff that I would kind of look at various different objects and kind of the equivalent of this Terminator overlay would go over one side and the other. And I just basically saw everything in wireframe in real life. And I was like, this is cool, but also I'm probably doing this too much. But this it's just the way I see things. So modeling for me is that's the bit I enjoy the most. Someone else
Cool.
can
So
write the
we're
text.
all in great hands then, clearly, aren't we?
And I
Cool.
have an
So
assistant, as always.
a little look at the kind of things we're going to be doing today. So as I said, we're going to look at the different types of modeling, box, spline, SDS, which is subdivision surface. And we're going to learn how to model using splines and what are called generators inside of Cinema 4D. We're also going to take a look at the great new Spline Importer in 25. So beforehand, we were able to bring in Adobe Illustrator files into Cinema 4D if we saved them in a certain way, and they came in as splines. So if anyone done it before, that was kind of the old process. Now, as of 25, we have this amazing new kind of spline or vector importer, and then we're going to take a look at that, and it just kind of it just opens up so many more possibilities and does a lot of the hard work for us. And so that's definitely going to be something we'll get into today. We're going to understand what subdivision surface modeling is and how we can actually do that inside of Cinema 4D. We've already looked at symmetry last week, but we're also going to look at what's called instancing and how we can use it and kind of speed up our workflow in Cinema 4D. And we're also, as you know, we do a lot of sort of technical and then practical. So the practical part is going to be we're going to model our own shelf scene using kind of all of these tools here. And so, as always, thanks to everyone who is live with us and who was live with us kind of last week, or anyone who's watching this recording. Let us know your questions. As you know, we want to answer them live, and because everyone gets then the most out of this, and then we can kind of bring the most of Cinema 4D to you guys as well. We want to answer your questions. We want it to be as interactive as possible. So Matt, are you ready? Also, hi to everyone who's saying hey. So hey to Jay, to Jeff. We've got people from Canada. We've got We've got Bristol, good old Bristol. We've got Texas, so loads of people on. So hey to Jerry, hey to Sassy, hey to Barry, Ryan, Nick, Jerry, loads
Oh,
of guys on that.
someone from Germany. Thanks, Mimo. Thanks for Salis from Greece. Christine,
Greece,
Montreal.
Montreal,
Oh, wow, they're coming in thick and
Oklahoma.
fast now. Lots of people. Yay. So to start with, it was just like everybody's from North or South America, and then we had Bristol. And I was like, yay. So,
Representing from the UK.
that's it. Right. Okay. Throw me your screen.
Cool, let me chuck it over. There you go.
Oh, my
Oh,
screen.
we've also got from Australia. Love that.
Oh, God, what time is it there? That must be late. That must be
It's
like
pretty
12
late.
or 1.
That's good
Yeah.
commitment. From California, France, we're all over. 11 p.m. in Australia. That's good commitment.
Have you
Love
just had
that.
an earthquake? One of my
Thanks
friends
for
has just
being
had an
here.
earthquake, apparently. Terrifying. Right. Okay. So can you see my screen and can you see my cinema?
Yes and yes.
Huzzah. Right. So we are going to look at these things over here called generators. Now, last week we looked at the primitives and the cubes and how we can slightly adjust those with things called deformers. That's all well and good. That allows you to create various different shapes and do certain things, but you're still kind of limited by what you start with, which is the deforming shape, like the primitive object that you have to start with. Over here, in this subdivision surface button is a drop down, and we click and hold and we see we've got a lot of different a lot of different types of generator. And these are all generators of some sort. I'm not going to go through every single one of them today because we'll be here forever. But the ones I'm going to go through are spline generators, which are these four, and we will eventually get to the subdivision surface one later. So the extrude, I was going to say NURBS then, which it hasn't been called for a very long time. The extrude generator is quite simple. Generators exist. Sorry, I just need to read it. But they don't have anything underlying in them as such. So they are a generator, and as generators do in real life, electricity generators, they require fuel. Okay, so as much as it's fun, putting petrol in a generator and getting electricity out, with this, we need to put some form of fuel in our generator. And funnily enough, the hint is in the word spline. So spline generators require some form of splines in order to create shapes. Now, splines exist all the way up here at the top. They are one of the most simplest shapes in Cinema 4D. They are basically what you would know as paths in Illustrator and things like that. Some of them you create yourself, and some have been pre-made for you. Now, I'm just going to use a very, very simple one, although I now can't find it because everything's moved around because it's here. You can see I am still getting used to this new layout. Apologies. The text spline. So this is the only one that's in a slightly different place just because it's under our text objects here. So if I create a text spline, boop, you can see that I have the word text in the text spline. And if I want to change what it says, I need to change the word text from the text spline in the text box. How many more times can I say the word text? Let's change it to spline. Oh, it auto updates. That's new. I like that. Or did I click off? I think I clicked off. Okay, so you can see that I now have the word spline. And just like any form of text-based thing, I can choose its alignment, which I know Elly always likes to put in the middle because then it puts the middle of the spline in the middle of the universe. You can change the height, you can change the horizontal spacing, you can change the vertical spacing if I had any. You can even turn on kerning and use the GUI for GUI for this sort of stuff. You can change the font, of course, if I just click and hold, and let's go titanium. Yes, that one. And I've got a spline. Now, splines don't actually kind of exist in the real world or 3D world. If I render, it just ceases to exist. So this is why we need something called a generator. Now, I have my two things. I have my spline and I have my extrude. Now, remember this. These are generators. Generators require you to put fuel inside them. It's very difficult to put a generator inside a tub of petrol. It won't do much. Remember the other way round. This is exactly the same. You put the fuel in the generator. So click and hold with your left mouse button on the fuel on the spline, click and hold down until it points down, the arrow points down. This means that you are going to put this inside, hence putting it inside box, and let go. And voila, I have my 3D text spline. And yes, before anybody says, why didn't you just create another one? It's because I like using the text spline. And the extrude has some nice features to it. So we can choose the auto direction. You can choose the depth that this thing actually extrudes to, you know, how far it actually goes. You can choose caps, which is very pretty. So you can choose curving on the edge, and then you can increase the size of the curve and the beveling and the extended shape, or you can go solids, or you can load even exciting presets. So I can do a stepped one and just double click, and then I've got this really cool stepped feature, and I can have it both sides, or I can just choose to have it one, because I can choose end cap, start cap, or the other way around. So it's one side and not the other. That's interesting. I can even have separate bevel controls, so I can control it one way but not the other. It's a really interesting feature to work with. And so the extrude is pretty simple. It's got the ability of adding materials to different starts, ends, caps, and things like that, which I believe Elly might get to a little bit later on. Yeah, and that's pretty much the extrude, to be perfectly honest. And of course, if I want to have a different shape, so let's try a flower, I can take the text spline out and I can put that one in there. If I wanted to have an exact copy, then I can just copy and paste, Command C, Command V. Let's take that one out and let's put the text spline back in it. So now I've got two, and I've got one in front of the other with the word spline. I'm going to swap the way these caps work. Woomph. Woomph. There we go. There you go. I am now going to do an animation of that, render it in polka dots, and that will be my NFT that's going to win me 94 million. Any questions?
Let's have a little look. So there's nothing necessarily on the extrude, but I was wondering, did you know this? Do you need to reinstall the CV toolbox for 25? I don't use it.
I haven't got it on this one. Probably because you need to put it in the in the user preferences for Cinema 4D. You can't put it in the plugins folder for Cinema. You need to load up 25. You need to go to Edit, Preferences, press the Open Preferences folder, look in there, and then put it in this plugins folder in your preferences file, not the plugins folder in Cinema 4D's installation directory. Whether everything has been updated to work with R25 yet, I do not know.
Cool, thanks.
That's right.
So had a good question here. If the font is too skinny for the beveling, is there a way to make the original font wider?
I don't think so, because that's entirely down to the font. I mean, you can try to see whether or not they've got bold and regular, but there's not a way of expanding that out, is there?
No, another thing could be if you increase the height of it enough, it may then compensate for a bevel. So if you
Yeah.
if you make it kind of a load bigger, then you'll be able to bevel. Also, you can bevel like a 0.1 like centimeter, so you don't have to stick to just like a whole 1 centimeter. I'm pretty sure you can 0.1.
Yeah, so if I have a look at that, so
So
if
you could
I
always
load,
try that out as well.
if I load that stepped preset, I mean, what I quite like about this is that you can really control how much that goes in and out. You know, you can control the curvature and it will do its best. This is one of the joys of 25.
Yeah, for the presets, I use them as sort of like a starting point and then
Yeah.
adjust.
Stepped.
Just having a little look. There's a couple more questions. Is there any way to reset the extrude to the original settings without deleting and adding another one?
No. In short, you need to do exactly that. You just delete and create a new one.
Oh, we have one here.
Although in theory, you could create yourself a preset, couldn't you?
Isn't there a way where you can double click on a setting?
Look, this is one of the new things in 25 with the preset. You go to default. That's it. Oh, I like that.
There you go. Yes, as of 25. So if you're not on 25, then no. But if you are, you can select the default preset.
That's so useful.
Peter was asking, my understanding is that you can import paths from Illustrator. You are about 45 minutes ahead of us. We will be going through a lovely new way of doing this, but I will also talk about the way pre-25, just to be sure we've kind of like covered all bases for everyone. I've got one here. When I select the elements, for example, vertices or edges, the edit mode gizmo, I like that word, is activated immediately, which is why you accidentally execute movements with the graphics tablet. Can I turn this off? So first select the elements and then select activate the edit mode, move, rotate, etc.
Good question. I don't know if it's one of these, like mouse move activation. Let's have a look. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, that's something we can have a look at later on. And I just had another quick one, which is a good one. At the point you're at now in your viewport, these surfaces aren't polys, right?
Correct.
If I extrude something and need to start editing as a poly surface, how do I do that?
With the didn't mean to zoom in there, with the make editable button, which now exists down here. So this is a cube, and what you can do, I can select my extrude here, or let's take the flower one because it's going to be more interesting, and I can press this button, which you can also use to press C on your keyboard, and that converts it to a polygonal mesh. Converting is a one-way street, unless of course you press undo, but actually you can't go back from being an extrude to from being a polygonal object to something else afterwards.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, that was all the questions for now. Any more, I'll let you know.
Sweet. Okay, right, let's move on. I'm going to press the new button up here. I've got to remember that's there. Yay. So let's have a look at, which one are we going to look at? We're going to look at the lathe now. And that is a really interesting new icon for the lathe. So spinning top now. So we select that once again. The lathe is a generator, so it requires some form of fuel. And this time we need to create a spline ourselves. Now, for those of you who don't know what a lathe is in real life, things do exist in real life. A lathe is a manufacturing piece of equipment that can be either worked in either metal or wood, or anything else basically that you spin. But for example, if you get a long, thin piece of wood, it clamps either end and then spins really, really fast. And you use a chisel or sharp implement to basically draw an outline profile as the thing spins. Therefore, you get the same profile all the way around. Really good for making banisters and chair legs. And out of metal, sonic screwdrivers. But in principle, in 3D, this takes exactly the same idea, which is it takes a shape like an outline and it revolves it, rotates it, spins it, lathes it 360 degrees. So we need to create an outside shape. And what I can do over here, I can use my spline pen. Now don't follow along, those of you who are following along, just watch for the moment. And I'm going to create some form of wine glass. So I click and hold because splines is like any form of path object. I can click and hold to create curved objects. Wow, that's a thick piece of glass. Or I can just click to create flat lines and straight lines. And once you're done, just press escape and it will finish. Now, people, don't ever do what I've just done, which is to create a spline in the 3D mode, because you have absolutely no idea where it's going to put its points. Cinema 4D will guess, and it did it basically tangentially, or in actual fact perpendicular to the angle of the camera, which is really lovely, but doesn't help me much. So I'm going to delete that, and we should always use one of our views, either the front or the side, okay? Don't use the top, because if you use the top, you will make a pancake. The reason for that is the lathe acts as a revolver around the y-axis. So straight up, it will go all the way around. If you draw on the y-axis, you will revolve all the way straight down. So you need to use one of these two, it doesn't matter which. So using my spline pen tool, I'm just going to increase the size of this, and I'm going to do my best guess of this. Now, you only need to do half of it, because this is the whole principle, is that it will revolve around the middle. So you only need to go up to the thickness. So that's the middle of my glass, this is the thickness. You only need to go up to 0 here in order to get it done, and then press escape, as I said before. And then what I can do, I select my spline, it is fuel, the fuel goes in the generator, let go, boom, there it is, there I have my wine glass. Let's go in there, although it's a bit more of an egg cup, so holy grail maybe, not sure. So let's just adjust it, which is the fun type of things of generating objects like this, is I can go to my move tool on the left, I can go to my points mode at the top, because I'm about to adjust the points of my spline, and go to my move tool, and I can select bits of my spline if I can see it, and I can move it out. I can move it up. If it's in my way, I can deactivate the lathe by using the little tick there, and I can readjust some of these, I can change the angles, I can move them in, I can make it all sorts of different ways that I like, and turn it back on and have a look, or I can edit it whilst it's in this mode. And you can see that I've got full potential to completely change what I want from a martini glass, the biggest martini glass in the world, possibly a bird bath. I'll go for bird bath.
Definitely martini.
Oh, that's one hell of a martini. Maybe you can bait, maybe it's a martini bird bath. No. And it's really easy to just readjust this and click. If you want to control click on an extra point, you can add them in, so you can completely change the shape and add in more points if you wish. Now, one of the things to remember about this is your points need to be actually at 0. I didn't. So my top point, as you can see, if I actually have a look, I have a hole. And the reason for that is the first point that I used is not at 0. So the easiest way to do this, you can see if I move this further and closer from 0, that it gets smaller and bigger. Ooh, we got some fun one there. We'll come back to that in a second. I'm going to 0 this out, and the easiest way to do that is to select your point, load up your coordinates manager using your little hot corner down here. It's the x-axis that I need to change. So, I can actually just press the reset transform button, can't I? Can I not? Does that not work with the points? Well, no, that's disappointing. Just 0 that out. And you now have the fact that that solidifies that. Underneath, you'll find that it's all black. Now, it shouldn't be black, really. And the reason for that is because I overshot the 0. So therefore, it is the other way. So it's overlapping and going crazy. So same issue, select that, press 0, 0 that out. And I now have my martini bird bath completely solid all the way around. Any questions about that?
Doesn't look like it at the moment.
Score.
Thanks.
That's all right.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing at the moment. But if anyone has any questions, then yeah, just let us know.
I've just noticed the new weld points icon. It's a little welding helmet. That's cool.
Little mask.
I like that. Oh. Anyway, so I'm very easily distracted by all of the new and how much everything has changed. Can't help it. Someone's saying they can't seem to adjust the tangents on their paths. So you need to be in points mode. You need to be on
the handles.
Sorry? Yeah.
You
need
press
to be on the
space.
move tool.
If you press the space bar, it will it's like a shortcut that takes you from moving them to then moving the handles.
Ooh.
That's how I switch between.
I just go on the move tool. So I don't think you need space, do you? My space just
sometimes if you've just done it, it won't let you change like the handles, and so if you hit the space bar, it will take you to the option to do so, and then you hit space bar again to the.
You also need to make sure that you only have the spline selected. If you had the lathe selected when you made the spline, you'll be able to see the points, but all you'll be able to do is move it. So this is the issue, is because you have the lathe and the spline selected. Make sure the spline is the only thing you have, and you'll always be able to adjust the handles. If you want to adjust them separately, you can hold down Shift so that I can adjust one tangent handle and leave the other one where it was.
I had another quick question. Could you possibly go through snapping to grid, if possible?
I can.
Justin was asking about grid snapping for positioning the point back. Oh, actually, to 000 in the viewport.
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is just to do 0, 0 there and there. I mean, right, let's see. How is snapping? Snapping exists up here. So you enable snap and then you choose the snap settings. So what do you want to snap to? So I can snap to work plane and snap to guides, I think. And then in theory, I can go and it will allow me to snap this to certain places. But definitely the easy thing to do is to zero stuff out, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't really use snapping, it's just a personal preference. Anything else?
I think there was something back. Yeah, so this was back relating to the extrude. On a text or other extrusion, how would you make it like round or a bubble? So I would personally use I would have like quite a high bevel, like radius, and then I'd also use maybe like a displacement deformer set to,
yeah, I mean,
all black or white, and then it will create like
that says curve, but ooh, that's dreadful. There must be a rounding. That's absolutely not. Well, I suppose it depends on the. Yeah, there's suppose that there is a way of doing it, isn't there? I think, but I can't quite remember. Boom.
Oh, to make it round on the sides like a marshmallow. So I would use a displacement deformer, but you need to make sure you up your subdivisions inside of your extrude.
Up it round, but it's not really just doable with the extrude tool on its own, I don't think.
No.
Okay, anything else? We'll have to go back to that one or pass.
Yeah, if we have time later, I can always run through it. Okay. No, that's it for now. Thanks.
Right, another new one. So let's have a look at the sweep. Now, the icons do give you a rough idea, funnily enough, that's what they're for, of what each spline generator does, and also how many splines you need. So you can see that the extrude has one, the lathe has one, the sweep here does in actual fact have two, and it's got the one at the front and the one at the side. So I'm just going to select that. So this means that I need two splines. So let us create a circle spline, and let us also create a star spline, of which I am going to shrink down. Dunk. And then I'm going to take all of these by shift selecting, or you can draw a box around these two, and then I'm going to click and drag and put them in the sweep, and I end up with this. And what the sweep does is it sweeps one shape around the other, and everybody just looks at me marginally blankly until I then do this, and everyone goes, oh, because you can now see that the star is being swept around the circle. This is what it does, and I can just control that with the end growth here. I can even control the start scale, start growth, where it actually starts, but we'll come back to that in a second. It also depends on the order that you put these in. So if I have the circle first and the star, you can see I get a very different shape. And the reason for this is because it is now sweeping a circle around the star instead. So if I go to my end growth, you can see that that is a circle being swept around the star. It's an interesting fashion, but nonetheless, that is what it is doing. And that very simply is how to do a sweep. And it's really useful for things like picture frames or skirting or wires and cables, anything that follows a certain trail around. Even to the point, let's create my text. Let's put else sweep. And let's create a sweep, and let's create a arc. Let's make the arc there and make it bigger. And let's put that in there and that in there. Sweep. So I actually really like that. You can see how easy it is just to take one shape and sweep it along the other. You can see that just pings out and creates your shape. You can, as I said, you can increase and decrease the scale, so it can start larger or smaller, or how far it goes around. You can even control a rotation, so it can twist it all. That's an interesting one. You can twist backwards and forwards and start that way. Parallel movement's an interesting one. That won't work very well for this at all. Banking will give you what it's doing. Constant cross section won't change much in this either. Details, however, allows you to add a scaling, so you can see that it scales it down halfway across. That really creates a really interesting one, as well as the fact that you can adjust the rotation however way you want to. So if I put another one there, and I can sweepy-doolally. There we go. It's quite a fun little thing to play with, but it's really useful for all sorts of things. Any questions on sweeping?
Just having a little look. So regarding the sweep, this is a bit of more like maybe your personal take on this one. Besides just best practices and experimenting, is there any way you can kind of predict or plan what shapes you would need to start with in order to get the result that you want? So in your personal kind of experience, what do you think?
It depends on what you want to work with, to be perfectly honest. I mean, one of the things I use it for, that I used to do in my beginners training, is creating picture frames. So I've got a rectangle that's going to be a picture frame of some sort, and I'm going to look in here and I'm going to think, right, if that's my picture frame, how big would the frame around it be, like the thickness? So if I just create a new thing, you can see I've got one of those fancy picture frames that's got loads of stuff. Dunk. And then I put both of these two in a sweep. And I have a fancy picture frame going all the way around the outside. So I suppose it depends on what it is that you think you want to get as to how you start with it. I think if that helps.
Cool, thanks.
It's okay.
So, you know, when you were adjusting the things in the sweep, Pamela was wondering, can those things be keyframed?
Yes, they can. Anything with this, it's changed, of course. Anything with this diamond, I missed the button, can be keyframed. So you can control, so you can indeed click the growth here, go to your end of that, dunk, whoop, and don't worry, we'll get to keyframing later on. Ooh, swooshy. In short, anything with one of these little diamonds can be keyframed.
Yes, and it's a lot of different things.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So Dawn was wondering, if you want to adjust the arc in the sweep, can you make just the arc editable in order to adjust the points?
Yep. Yep, that, because the one is the line, so one is the shape, this is the profile, and then you have the arc. So if you want to change what the arc does, you know, I can increase the arc end angle and the start angle, or I can make it editable, and then I can adjust the individual shapes of that particular arc if I wanted to. So let's add in a point. Ooh, it helps if I've got it selected and I'm on points mode. So there's a shape, and now I can do that. And now you can now see that my shape has changed.
I got another quick one. How do we control which side the text sweep is facing? My sweep is upside down.
That depends on. It doesn't even depend on that, really. That it shouldn't be. So if I create a text and if I create an arc and then I change my arc to XZ and I click and drag both of them, I'm going to hold down Control and Option or Control and Alt, and it means that I can add them both to something at the same time. Well, that's different. That isn't even what I created earlier, was it? Interesting. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it inherited.
How to break
something.
Cinema 4D with Matt and Elly.
Let me try doing that manually. Sweep. Oh, it's because I put them the wrong way around, didn't I? Oh, always check which way around stuff goes.
You did it on purpose.
Rookie mistake.
Right.
It shouldn't be upside down. I don't quite know how it would be. Unless you've changed the rotation or rotated the text. Not sure. Or rotated your viewport.
Try set everything back to default.
Yeah, just go view frame default.
Oh, forgot to change the direction of the arc.
Ah,
cool.
Okay, right, fair enough.
Yeah. One quick one just popped up. Is the sweep tool limited to 2 splines, or can you have intermediary splines?
Well,
That was a
that
strange
made sense,
noise.
didn't it? That was a good noise. That's a well, sort of, yes, but not quite.
Trainer answer. It depends.
The sweep itself is limited to 2 splines to have one shape profile another. That's exactly what it does. It can't do any more than that. you can enter a third spline, which is what they call a rail spline. That rail spline allows me to control the kind of curvature of that. How's the best way to think of it? Think of it like a scalextrics track. So when you've got a scalextrics track that goes around a corner, it doesn't go around flat normally. It will curve its way up, and this allows you to control that at certain points so that you can control the curvature of certain bits along splines. So if I make this spline editable and I select 2 of my points, I can control where it curves up and where it curves down as part of this. So that's all the rail spline will do. I can't have an intermediary shape changer as such. But bear with us for the next one.
Cool, yeah, that's all the questions for now. Cheers.
Awesome, right. So last but not least then, we have the loft. Now the loft, as you can see from the image, has 3 splines. This is technically a lie because you can have as many splines in it as you particularly want. So let's create a circle. There it is. Let's create a rectangle. Let's move it back. Plump. Let's create a flower. And let's move that further back. No, that's the wrong one. And let's create a star, and let's put that actually in the middle, and I'm just going to reorder those. And let's create a, keep going to the wrong place, cogwheel, and stick that right at the end. Dunk. And then I'm going to drag a box around all of those, and I'm going to put them in my loft, and I'm going to get a really big smushy mess. But what effectively is happening is Cinema 4D is treating the splines like a wooden frame, and then it is trying to skin it around the outside. And you can see that it doesn't do too bad a job. That is definitely a circle, and if I turn off the circle, I've definitely got a rectangle. If I turn off the rectangle, I've definitely got a star. If I turn off the star, that's definitely not a flower. And neither, in any shape or form, is that a cogwheel. And the reason for this is Cinema 4D by default is given a small amount of geometry in the loft to deal with it. This is a mesh subdivision. And you can see that the U subdivision is 16, which means that it's using 16 polygons all the way around the outside to get from one shape to another, which from a square to a circle is absolutely fine. But from a star to a flower to a cogwheel, it doesn't work. So I'm just going to grab my slider and increase that. And even at 100, it's not right. So I'm just going to use the virtual slider, click on the number, and then drag my mouse to the right. And you can see that I'm now getting something that is much more like a cogwheel. Even to the point where I can turn off the circle, I can turn off the rectangle, I can turn off the star, and that's definitely a flower. Interesting artifacting, but we'll ignore that for the moment. Turn those back on, and I can move them around. So I can move the whole thing, or I can grab the circle and I can move it forward, I can move it up, I can move the rectangle around, or I can go to my rectangle and I can change its proportions if I particularly want. So all of this is non-destructive editing, and I can do what I want with it. And as odd as that seems, it is really a useful tool. I've done all sorts of things with it, like coffee cups, vases, chess pieces. Those sorts of things are quite useful to be done with this kind of tool. And as you can see, you've kind of got that intermediary shape in a way you can't, that allows you to change these individual items. Again, you want to just be wary of these things as well. So the subdivision may enable you to smooth stuff out. You can see that whilst the shape from one to the other, it got a bit blocky on the edges, so I can increase that. And you can see if I just go to my display that this is actually what it's doing. The number of shapes, the number of polygons it allows to get from one shape to another. Oops. And you can see that the less there are, the more it struggles to get a definite shape that actually works. So create a few more and you'll be fine. Okay, any questions on the loft?
Nothing at the moment.
Woohoo!
You've shown them everything.
That's it. You all know everything now. The end.
Cool. Yeah. No questions on that.
Wow. Sweet. Okay. So what's next? That would be box modeling then, really, wouldn't it?
Box modeling, and then yeah, SDS modeling. Oh,
Oh,
one quick question just popped in.
yeah.
How would you do hollow shapes with a loft?
So you've got the loft, you've got caps. Turn off the caps. Dump, dump. Done.
Oh, that would look cool from the inside.
That would be, wouldn't it? That's kind of like
Sweep
some
your camera through.
trippy. Whee. Or looks like it's
Cool.
going to be part of a medical exam, and I really don't want to have. Anyway,
Oh no.
I've had to deal with medical files before, and it was like someone did an animation of a heart stint going in, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll help with that. Why does my chest hurt?" Anyway, oh, that's an interesting one from Kaya. Does
I was going to say,
subdivision?
I was about to say that.
It does, because the more subdivisions you have, the more geometry you will have to UV. It's that simple. There will just be more of it to faff with. It may be not necessarily complicated to deal with. You know, a cube with 100 by 100 segments will still UV map incredibly easily and simply. So it does entirely depend on what it is that you are attempting to UV. I mean, I'm not going to lie, this isn't the shape I'd want to attempt to UV, but it's not because of the number of subdivisions, it's just simply because of the shape. It's more of the shape that's the complicated thing more than the number of subdivisions. Anything else?
Can you extrude that tunnel? So I like add thickness.
In theory, there are a couple of ways of doing that. If you did not want, well, you can make it editable and extrude it. That's one. The other one, can I cheat? I mean, improvise. I mean, cloth surface. Dunk,
That's what I'd have done. Yeah.
dunk, dunk. It's not necessarily pretty, and it does overlap that way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what if it was a bit smaller?
Oh, it's because it's going that way. Ah, okay. Right. For some bizarre reason I've never quite figured out, the loft reverses the normals. For those people who want to know what normals are, you have a polygon, and a polygon has an out and an in. Out is facing you, in is obviously the other side. It's the back face of the object. For some reason, this always makes them the wrong way round. So I need to flip the normal, then turn on the cloth surface, and then extrude, not middle button, then extrude that out, and I would then get a thickness around the outside. Look at that. So that's completely not part of the beginner's training, but nonetheless, that's cool. Anything else? Because I've got to cover box modeling.
Are you always modeling with the cat? That's the most important
One
thing.
form or another one, yeah. This one, perhaps, maybe one of the others, but yeah, he's always there. He follows me around.
The cat's in charge
Pretty much.
of us.
He's the genius. I just do what he says. It's like Ratatouille. Cool. Right. Okay. Let's crack on with box modeling then. So, box modeling is, funnily enough, exactly how that sounds. Largely because you always start with a box. I'm just going to adjust that because now I can see my screen. And I'm going to start with a cube, funnily enough, box. Now, this is the process I talked about earlier. We can turn this into a polygonal object. So at the moment, I can adjust its height, I can adjust its width, and I can adjust its depth, yada, yada, yada. Default, that's new. At the moment, I can go to these different modes, but nothing happens because my object is not editable. So with my object selected, I'm going to press this button here, or C on your keyboard, make editable, converts a parametric object into a polygonal object. Boom. Several things happen. The cube icon has now changed to a polygon icon. The orange yellow handles have now disappeared and I cannot change what it is. How I now, however, can select my way through these different modes and I can see that I've got a blue outline and I can hover over a polygon, or I can hover over an edge or a point. And this is really useful. So I can select a point, I can move it up and down, I can completely change the way that works. I can select an edge and I can go that way or up and down if I particularly want to break it, or I can select faces. Whee! So this is my ability now of polygonally modeling something inside of Cinema 4D. I can change the way this works. I used to go up to modeling layout, but it's not particularly necessary anymore, other than the fact that it gives you a smidge more space, purely because you have these dynamic palettes on the left hand side, which I can now use. So if I select one of these objects, I'm going to select the second one down, which is Extrude, and I'm going to select that, and I'm not going to press anywhere near my axes. I'm going to click and hold in an empty space over here, click left mouse button, drag from right to left, and I'm extruding. Now what that is doing, that is adding geometry in the shape of the original face forward. So you can see that whereas it was just one polygon around, I've now got two that way. And I can click and drag again, and there it is, ding, ding, ding. If I was to grab the handles, all I'm doing is moving that. I'm not actually extruding. Now, if I wanted to do a different type of extrude, or if I wanted to be more exact with it, my extrude tool has attributes over here. So this is now showing me the settings for the tool itself. And I can click and drag this and all of a sudden it starts to go up, or I can be, more exact. I can say, actually, I want this to be 250 and then just press tab and it's extruded it like that. If I wanted to do it again, I'll press new transform and it will do another one. If I can select that and I can actually do new transform and it will use the same settings that I have got. And it's really useful for adding more geometry out, giving yourself more mesh to play with so that you can help get your shapes. Another one of these tools is Inset, as previously known as Extrude Inner. This insets a polygon. Once again, I'm not going to click anywhere on these axes. I'm going to click over here in a blank face, and from right to left with the left mouse, it shrinks. If I click and hold from left to right, I make a bigger cube. And then that's then useful because I can extrude and I can extrude that out. See, really helpful. And then I can go back to inset and I can shrink that down, and then I can press D on my keyboard because that's my shortcut for extrude, and click and drag and make another one. Dunk. And let's just have lots of fun by pressing I and doing that, and D and doing that again. If I want, I can use another one of our tools, which is called the bevel tool, which kind of combines the two. So if I click and drag with that, you can see that it creates it extrudes out, but shrinks the polygon inside as well to create some form of bevel or chamfer, which is very useful indeed. And again, be aware that there are loads of tools and loads of attributes to these tools in the bottom right hand corner that you can play with that may be useful for you. So just be aware of that. Now, what if I wanted to affect this? This is just one polygon all the way across. What if I wanted to make more of them? So I wanted to do something in the middle. Well, we have our line cut tools, and we have three tools here: line cut, plane cut, and loop cut. Now, loop cut, I'm going to start with the last one first because it's so easy. if I hover over an edge, you can see that I can now create some form of loop cut. It gives you that ghosting highlighting to let me know where it's going to cut, and I can just click once there, and it's created this cut. Now I get this little gizmo at the top, and this gizmo allows me to actually choose a percentage where I want this to be. So 10%, or I can drag it manually if I want to do it. I've even got a plus button here, so I can have 2 cuts or 3 cuts or 4 cuts, and then I can manually edit each one of these to be exactly where I want it, which is like incredibly super useful to use, because you're always going to need to add more geometry. Now it does it based on the percentage of distance through a polygon, which I'll explain. So this polygon on the side is much bigger than this polygon on the edge. But if it's 50% here, it's 50% all the way around. If I do 25%, you can see that the angle is curving up, and I'm going to get something that's kind of not flat all the way around, but it is nonetheless 20%, or 25%. It is a quarter of the height of that polygon and of that polygon, no matter how big the polygon is that it is trying to work its way around. So that's just one of those things to bear in mind when using the loop cut. Another one is the plane cut. Now the plane cut allows me to go like that. And then if I move around, I have a line, a white line that is showing me where it will cut, and I now have this gizmo. And this is my plane cut gizmo, which I can now edit. So I can move it up and down. As you can see, stuff changes in my tool. I can rotate it around, I can change its angle, I can move it that way, I can move it up and down. I can increase the number of cuts if I want to. I can increase the cut spacing here. I can reset the rotation manually with all of those, changing the height that way if I particularly want. That looks wonky to me, but I might be wrong. Perhaps I move stuff up. So you can see that I've got full capability of adjusting and editing this in any way, shape, or form. Before I initialize it, just clicking off and press escape, and now I have, as you can see, all of this geometry. And last but not least, the line cut tool allows me to just draw something on a shape over here. Boom. There you go. I can just click, clickety, click, 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 and it's done. I know the next question will be, can you do curves? The answer is no. This is not a path or pen tool. It just allows you to do straight geometry. So I can select those, and then if I want, I can press 9 to select that, and then I can press D to, and then press Shift, and press Shift, click, and then press D to extrude, and extrude them out, and have some really strange symbols of some kind appear on my strange thing. That's box modeling in a nutshell. There is just so much more to it, obviously, depending on the shapes that you want to make and how you want to do stuff, because you can, of course, go to my edges mode and I can select edges and I can move them up. You can select points if you want to, be more responsible, or, need to adjust particular points around, like I can up here, and change my shape in any way. So these points, can be shift selected, and I can move them over here instead. There is just so much you can do that it's very difficult to kind of really get into it in a few minutes. But I'm just trying to show you the basics of some of the tools, because very quickly, Elly will be showing you how to do cool stuff with all of this. Anyway, any questions on box modeling?
No, there aren't actually. However,
Are we
Joseph
still
was saying,
live?
he was saying, holy cow, I've done C4D for 5 years and this would have saved me so much time on some projects. So glad we
Wow.
can be helpful.
Absolutely.
One quick one has just come in. Can the knife function be combined with snapping, for example, always on the center of an edge?
I have no idea. To be perfectly honest, absolutely no idea. So if I go to my line cut tool, I would need snapping. I can snap to edges, but I don't think I can snap to the center of an edge. So I wouldn't be able to pinpoint midpoint.
Oh,
Yes, you can.
oh, we're all learning today.
That's it. I like that. Yes. Yes, you can. There we go. That was easy.
That's cool. Is there a smooth mode / function similar to Maya?
That, my friend,
Yes,
is the
there
next
is.
thing to show you. So, subdivision surface modeling, which is what I'm about to show you, is basically box modeling with the generator. To very quickly, yeah, let's just do this, although it may look dodgy. So we have a cube here, and that is a box modeling. A subdivision surface generator, if I just turn that on and drag and drop that in, we have this absolute mess. Okay, but it is a smoothed mess nonetheless, and this is what the subdivision surface generator does. It smooths stuff.
Is this your
Why on
second
earth would you want?
NFT?
Yeah, that's it. Maybe I combine the two. This is another 64 million just there. To fully demonstrate, I'm going to just create a cube, and this cube is 1 by 1 by 1 segment, so it is the most bog standard cube, and I'm going to create myself this subdivision surface. I can just click that, and I'm going to drag and drop my cube into the subdivision surface, and I end up with a rather blocky sphere. Why would you do that, I hear you say? Well, it's really useful for rounding edges. Obviously, nothing in the world is like this at all points, has straight angles and lines at all things. Some are curved, some have rounding, some have different edges, some things are organic. And what this does, it rounds stuff out, and it can be useful for creating all sorts of shapes. Now, at the moment, I am limited to the original shape of the cube. But what I can do, I can increase the number of segments that my cube has, and you can see that all of a sudden, I get a much blockier shape. I'm just going to turn on ground shading with lines, and you can see that if I go back to 1 by 1 by 1, oops, 1 by 1 by 1, right, my cube is 1 by 1 by 1, so 1 polygon, 1 polygon, 1 polygon. Subdivision surface is currently set to 2, which means it subdivides twice. So if I just turn that to 1, you can now see that it's 2 by 2 by 2. If I go to that, it's 4 by 4 by 4. Up one more, you guessed it, 8 by 8 by 8. And the more I do that, the smoother my geometry will be. If I increase the number of polygons that there are in my cube, then it's subdividing each one. So if I go back to dink, 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 you can see that it's 2 by 1 by 1. And this time it's 4 by 2 by 2. And this is going to be 8 by 2 by 2. And so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through the entire times table at you. But you do get a different shape depending on the number of segments that you have. And now all of a sudden it's very useful for creating things like, ooh, sofa cushions, or surfboards, or bars of soap, or I have absolutely no idea what that would be. Naff mouse mats from the 80s. I'm going to press the button again. Yes. So you've got the ability of rounding out edges and changing shapes of things. And that's just a super useful thing to be able to try and do. And you can see the difference that it makes here with the ability of curving things around. But the problem you can see is, of course, that it curves and rounds everything. What if I wanted the edges where it meets here and here to be solid, to be a sharp angle? Well, you can do that in Cinema 4D. And I'm going to use the selection tool, of which I don't think is on the screen anymore. So I'm going to, it's not there at all, is it? selection tools in model mode. No. Ah, but it is up there. Yes, it is. Loop select, and I'm going to make sure I'm on edge mode, and I'm going to select that. And don't worry about following me along. I'm about to do an explanation. You can see that very quickly I can sharpen those edges. Now, what I'm going to do on my cube, which I'm going to just reset to normal. So I have a cube and a subdivision surface. I'm going to make sure my cube is selected, and I'm going to press C to make it editable. Not the subdivision surface. Do not make the subdivision surface editable. That will defeat the point. Make your cube editable. And then what I'm going to do, I am going to hold down Control on my keyboard and click and drag the red arrow, and I get a duplicate. And I'm going to do it again, and I get another duplicate. Now, these are 3 separate objects that I'm going to edit individually, and I'm going to show you what subdivision surface weighting does, which really isn't visible anymore, is it? That's a shame. Okay. So on point mode, I'm going to go to my first cube. I'm going to go to my loop selection tool, and I'm going to hover over the top and then click. You can see which loop it's going to select. So that means I've selected all 4 points at the top. And then, oh, it is there. Good. Sorry, just checking. So there's been so many changes with the icons. I am having to try to remember where everything is. Weight subdivision surface. So I'm going to click that button there now with my point selected. And in an empty space, I'm going to click and hold with my left mouse button and drag from left to right. And you can see that the percentage that the subdivision is having, the weight it is having on those points, is ranging from 100% fully affected to 0% totally not affected. And I can turn off my subdivision surface, and you can see the difference in the position of the points at the bottom that I haven't moved, and the points at the top, which have been now 0 weighted, but I get a very different shape. Moving on to my subdivision surface number 1, I'm going to go to my edge mode at the top. And then I'm going to go to my loop selection tool, and I'm going to select the top loop around there. Then once again, I'm going to go to my subdivision weight tool, which is I don't know why. To be honest, I thought, is that a handbag in a thing or a bell? But of course, it's a weight, isn't it? So anyway,
new handbag mode.
I was going to say, I was just like, what is that? Sorry. Click and hold in an empty space from left to right, and I'm now weighting that edge, and that edge loop is now being weighted. So it returns to the surface of the cube, but the edge remains curved, but it is brought back to the height of the original cube surface. And then, last but not least, I'm just going to go to polygon mode. I'm going to go to my move tool. I'm going to select a polygon. Now, a shortcut, or a sticky shortcut, as they call it, because I'm going to hold down full stop, or as Americans call it, period, on the keyboard. So click and hold that with your finger, and then with your mouse button, click and drag from left to right. And I am using that tool without having to activate it over there, which means it's a very useful shortcut to kind of just nip in and out. And as you've noticed, I don't have to just do either and or. So I don't just have to do 100% or 0%. I can do 50% if I really want to, or 18%, and I can tell that because it tells me in the bottom left-hand corner. I can do 89%, or 100%. But the actual cubes underneath, dunk, 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 remain the same. So I haven't actually affected that geometry whatsoever. I have simply affected the way the curvature is created with the subdivision surface. Okay. Have I got time to make the creation?
Yeah, sure, go for it. Still got
okay.
Still got minutes there. I think we're good.
That's all right.
We can always
we never overrun. I have another cat.
Also, Jeff was liking you saying full stop, by the way.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's full stop for me. It was only because we did it the last time and people were like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh yeah, period." Okay, so what we're going to do, we are very, very, very quickly going to do a bit of SDS modeling. If you happen to watch this last time, you know exactly what I'm about to create. If you watched this last time, you'll be fine. So I'm going to create a cube first, and then I'm going to make my cube editable. And then I'm going to create a subdivision surface, and I'm going to put the cube in the subdivision surface. Ta-da. I'm going to select my cube, and I'm going to go to polygon mode, and I'm going to select that first front polygon. Then I'm going to go to my extrude tool. I'm going to change my offset to 200 and press enter. Boom. I'm then going to press new transform to do it again. So I now have a cylinder 3 polygons long. Okay, going to my scale tool, which is also T on your keyboard, I'm going to click and drag to start scaling in an empty space, and then I'm going to hold down Shift to lock it to 5% increments and get to 30. Then I am going to go to the extrude. Yes, I am going fast. You may need to watch this back. And then I'm going to click new transform. There we go. What on earth is he making, says everybody. Then I'm going to select the back one, and I'm going to select new transform, new transform, new transform. So I now have a polygon that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 polygons long. Okay, there is a body of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is a middle part, 1, and a head or nose. With this one selected, I'm going to go to my scale tool, and once again, I'm going to start to scale by holding my little left mouse button, hold down Shift, clickety click to get it to 5-degree increments, and I'm going to get to 25. Then I'm going to press D on my keyboard, which is once again the extrude tool, and I'm going to press new transform. And then I'm going to press new transform. Okay, can you guess what it is yet? Then I'm going to select that side and then Shift select the other. So I have polygons both sides selected. Okay, really helpful. Then, not worrying about an exact offset, I'm going to click and drag in an empty space from left to right, and I'm going to go out until it's about 300. And I say about, I don't really care if it's not. And then I'm going to grab my blue handle and move them backwards a bit. Okay, odd, isn't it? Okay, so with that selected, or done rather, I'm going to look underneath at the second one back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth one back, sorry. And I'm going to change the offset to 50 and press enter, bump. And that gives me this little dip. And then I'm going to set, ooh, not twice. Then I'm going to, stop it. There we go. Might just need to move my camera, and I'm going to Shift select the 2 polygons either side of this little nubbin that I've created, and I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to extrude them out about 200, and then I'm going to press T on my keyboard to give me the scaling tool. I'm going to grab the blue one, and I'm going to squidge it into about 30%. I'm going to press E on my keyboard to go to the move tool, and then I'm going to grab the blue arrow and move it back a bit and move it down a bit. And very quickly, I have created an absolutely non-anatomically correct dolphin. And yes, it doesn't look much like a dolphin, and there's an awful lot I can do, but very quickly you can see I've been able to bring something to shape. And after this, you can really do some great adjustments. So I'm going to go to my edge mode. I'm going to grab the front of that head bar, and I'm going to move it up on the blue. And all of a sudden, we've got a lot more shape. which is super useful. I'm going to go to my polygon mode and I'm going to go to my loop selection and I'm going to select that front loop, E to the move tool and move it down. Using my loop select on an edge mode, I'm actually going to select that, E, and then move it back so that it isn't quite so uniform. And very quickly, you know, I can really adjust the shapes of these things. So UL, which is the shortcut for loop select, which is U, don't move the mouse, press L. These shortcuts are dual key shortcuts. If I move my mouse, my dual key will disappear. So yeah, keep doing that. It's going to disappear. It's going to be infuriating. So press U, and this will bring you a whole load of other shortcuts that I can use, one of which will be L for loop select. So press L for loop select, and then I'm going to select that, press T, and click and drag from right to left to shrink it a bit. And you can see that very quickly, I have created this, well, skinny-ish dolphin, and I can move stuff around. You know, I can loop select all of those polygons if I particularly want to, and then maybe all of those, press E, and then move them down so that it's a bit more shape to it rather than it being quite so uniform. And I'm going to do the same here as well. So loop select that edge, press T, click and drag to shrink so that it's a bit more shapely. I know he hasn't got a dorsal fin. Let's do that then. So let's go to polygon mode, select that one polygon, and then I'm going to go to inset. I'm going to click and drag it a smidge because it's just going to create that very quickly. And then I'm going to go to T, grab the red handle and move it that way so that it's about 15%. I'm going to show you a really quick trick as well. I'm going to hold down, I'm going to go to E, hold down Control, and then drag that up. That's a very, very quick kind of sticky extrude shortcut, but it doesn't give you anywhere near as much of the options as it had before. Then shrinking it with T, then E to move it back. And there we go. There is Flipper's lesser known younger brother in all of about 10 minutes.
That was great. But it shows how quickly it can be done as well.
Yeah. As I say, I mean, as long as it's viewed from a distance and no one gets too close, you'll be absolutely fine to think it's a dolphin or an ichthyosaur.
No, that's great. I don't think really many questions have come in. Oh, Jeff was wondering, could you show the it without the subdivision surface, just so we can see what like the this looks like?
There you go. This is why we use the subdivision surface. Yeah, this is this was 3D modeling in the 80s. Here's 3D modeling now. And obviously you could then actually go to sculpting if you wanted to, which is not something we cover in this because time more than anything else. But you can see the number of polygons it has to smooth this out. If you want, you could increase the subdivision so that it's a bit smoother. And you will get a sort of smoother look of it there, which I think is quite nice.
No, it's great. That's cool.
Thank you very much. Minecrafty, yes.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at. It definitely is.
I like that, Rick. Yeah, I'm with you absolutely on that. This is Flipper's younger brother, Flopper. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's it.
Shall I?
It's you. It's all you, isn't it?
Yes. Let's yeah. I'll get into building some stuff with those techniques you just showed us.
Time for me to throw the screen at you.
Yes, chuck it over.
Consider it thrown.
Right, cool. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Cool. So yeah, thanks for that, Matt. First of all, that was some great stuff. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take some of that knowledge and information, mainly the kind of like spline and generator side of things, and we're going to model this shelf scene. So this is made up of a whole bunch of different splines and generators inside of Cinema 4D, along with some of our primitives, which we can probably see here in our shelf. So what we're going to do, we're going to build this up from scratch. So if anyone's following along, then feel free. If not, there is project files I've linked in the chat. But if you can't see those, let us know in the questions and we'll reply with the link to that Dropbox link as well. So you can grab that this actual project file yourselves. And then what I'm going to do, I'm then going to show, so at the end of this, I'll show the new Spline importer. And hopefully if we have time, I'll do some bubble text. But you know, we don't mind overrunning. So yeah, as always, let Matt know your questions and then he'll basically just stop me mid-flow and then we can answer them. So, oh, that was just a little balloon text. So, right, I'm going to open up a whole new scene and we're going to build this from scratch. So I'm going to start off by building this actual shelf unit first, because this just uses a couple of techniques that we looked at last week with our primitives, but it also uses something called instancing, which is a lot of fun. Cool, so first things first, let's grab ourselves a cube and we're going to just sort of resize this a bit. So I'm going to make it a bit smaller. So something like 200 by 6 by 60, and we get this nice shelf shape. And the only other thing I'm going to do is, so if you look at like everything around you, everything has sort of like natural rounding or natural beveling. And at the moment we have this really sharp edge. And so we just want to kind of fillet this edge a little bit. So all I'm going to do is in my cube, I'm going to switch this on, and 3 centimeters is a little bit too big. So I'm just going to bring this back down, maybe to like 1. You know what? I'm actually going to go 0.5. Because I don't want it to be like too crazy, just a nice little bit of like rounding on the edge. Cool, right, so now we want 3 of these. So I could just duplicate my cube. So I could just hold Command and click and drag and then move it up. But the problem with this is if I then want to change, let's say, the depth of my cubes, I'd have to do it on both of them. And that's not like a massive problem when we've only got like a couple of objects. But imagine we had a whole load of them. It can be a little bit irritating to be like, oh no, I don't know, the producer wants it a different size. And so what we can take advantage of is something called instancing. So let me just delete this second cube and I'll keep my original. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select my original cube so it's highlighted, and I can tell it's highlighted because it's turned orange. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to come into, so this menu here is where we can find all of our generators. You know, the ones that Matt's just gone through, so Subdivision, Cloth, Extrude, all of those. But we also have what's called instance. So if I just sort of let go of my mouse, we now have a cube instance. And inside of this cube instance, so if I select that, we have a reference object. And our reference object is our original primitive cube. And so we can't see it at the moment because they're actually on top of one another. So let me just grab my cube instance and I'm going to move it up 50 centimeters. So I'm holding my shift key and I'm pulling this up 50 centimeters. Cool. Now what I can do, I can now actually duplicate my cube instance. And so I'm just going to do that normal thing. I'm going to press my command and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. And I now have a duplicate, which is referencing that same original cube. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to pull this up 50 centimeters as well. And so the wonder of instancing, now if I want to change the size of my cube, so if I grab my original cube, and let's say I want to change this to 40 centimeters instead of 60, as I press 40 and hit enter, it's going to update all of my cubes, including my instances as well. So this is like a nice trick when you have duplicate objects, instancing. So cool, I'm going to actually put them back on 260 because I quite like that size. And I'm going to leave them like that. Cool, right, so now let's do sort of like the back brackets. And that again is just another cube. And then we're just going to make this 5 by 150 by 5. So these are the settings that we're going to have for this one. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pull this up 50 centimeters so it's in the middle. And then I'm going to pull it back let's say to there, and then we might need to just come in here, and then we can sort of pull this right on here, just so it's sort of close enough. Cool. So last week we had a look at symmetry inside of Cinema 4D. So what we can do is we can come back into our sort of generators menu, and we can grab our symmetry. And the way that this works is we have to make the object that we want to kind of have the duplicate and do the symmetry on, we have to make it a child of our symmetry generator. So what I need to do, because this is the one I want to like duplicate, I'm going to just make it a child of my symmetry. And then when I pull this out, we now have sort of like an exact copy on the other side. So now I can just sort of position that where I want, and we'll leave it like that for now. So now, super quickly, we have built our shelf. And so now let's actually look at how we can build some of the individual elements that we have on that. So the first thing we're going to build, if we come back to here, is going to be this Maxon text. And so this uses a text spline and our extrude. So we can build this super quickly for our scene. What I'm going to do as well, I'm going to grab all of these elements and I'm going to go to Option G. And that was how we can group everything. And I'm just going to go and call this like shelf, just so it's nice and neat and tidy.
Could you super quickly just show something that you can instance that group?
Yeah.
So just
the whole shelf now, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool, right.
And the fact that we can then create an instance of that, move that over another bit, and as long as we can continue to add or change stuff to the group, we can have an instance of a group. So you can only, an instance is only capable of instancing one thing at a time, but that thing could be a group. Thank you.
No worries. Right, let me get rid of it all. Cool, let me get rid of that. Right, cool. So let's get to making this sort of a text block. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my text spline. And so Matt's already shown us like all the different stuff inside the text spline. So I'm not going to worry about showing this too much. Let me just kind of move this a little bit out of the way and give myself some more room here. So I'm going to write, you can write whatever you want here. I'm going to, keep it traditional and write the word Maxon. And I'm going to just find like a nice bold font. So I quite like this one here. And I'm going to set it to black. So we have nice sort of like bold letters. And there's another thing happening here. So let me just center this to the middle. And for now, I'm actually just going to hide my my shelf, because I don't want it to be in the way while I'm building this. So what I'm going to do on my shelf null, so on my group, I'm just going to switch both of these to red by clicking them both twice. And now it's hidden out the way, and so I can work just on my text spline. So let me just kind of make this a little bit smaller. Cool. So we can see here that we have a little bit of like intersecting going on between my A and my X. So what I want to do, I don't want to adjust my horizontal spacing, because then the trouble is every other letter is too far apart. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to switch on my kerning, and I'm just going to pull my X over just to create that nice gap in between there. I'm going to switch that back off. Cool, and now I have no intersecting. So when I turn this into like geometry, we're not going to have any kind of weird, like messy polygons happening, which can be a bit annoying. Cool, right, now all we have to do is we need to turn this into geometry, and we know that we can do that by using our extrude generator. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab my extrude, and now we need to tell Cinema 4D that we want them to work together. We want the text spline and the extrude to kind of be in the same hierarchy. So my text spline, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to drop it onto my extrude. And so we can see my extrude has kind of gone white, and we also have this arrow pointing down. And so as soon as I let go, two things have happened. We can now see in my viewport that we have some geometry, and we also now have my text spline kind of branching off from my extrude. So we can see that that's working exactly how we thought it would. And then I'm just going to perfect some of these settings a little bit. And so this offset is way too big. And I mean, I'm probably going to end up making this even smaller when we bring our shelf back to make it match. But for now, I'm just going to sort of change this offset to maybe something like 20. Cool. So we're getting there. Now we can take advantage of our really cool like bevel tools that Matt was showing us. And what I ended up going for, I ended up doing a just like a step. And then I think I did about a size of like 1 cent, maybe 2 centimeters. But then I'm only going to have one segment. And so we create this nice kind of like blocky extrude, which I think that's quite cool. And that was pretty much how I created the block text. And so all we're going to do, we're going to bring our shelf back, and now we can see here that it is way too big. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come into my text spline, and I'm maybe going to set this to like 30. Oh, that's not too bad actually. Yeah, maybe we'll go 35. And then now I'm going to adjust my extrude a little bit more. Let's maybe go an offset of 15. Cool. And now I just want to place it on this middle shelf here. And so we can take advantage of our placement tools, which Matt went through last week. So if I grab my place tool, we now have this sort of purple bunch of icons. And if I grab my Maxon text, I can actually just place it on here. And now it's actually gone exactly onto the shelf. And we can even kind of rotate it, and it's going to stay on there.
This
So
has to be one
happens,
of my favourite features from the last two, to be perfectly honest. It's just so helpful.
It makes things so easy. So what you can also see, hopefully you can see on the outside, there's like light blue lines. And so when they're light blue, it means it's all good. If they turn red, it means it's having a problem with placing it properly. And so I can see that. Let me see if I can make them go red. There we go. Okay, see there, it's sort of like, oh, this isn't really working properly. So it will give you a sort of like color preview. Cool. So I might even, now I've sort of shrunk it down a little, I'm gonna just change this size to 1 again. Cool. Right, so let's have a look at what we're gonna make next. So let's make this kind of like bars thing here. And if we grab, we can have a look at the original spline. If I switch my lathe off and come out of here, this is sort of the original spline that I ended up drawing. And so let's sort of recreate that. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to come into my front view for this, and that's because I want my spline to remain on like one single plane. I don't want my points to be kind of moving on the Z axis. And so I'm going to do that in my front view. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to switch my shelf off just so it's like not in the way too much. And I'm going to come into the middle here, and I'm going to draw this, right? So I apologize now because my talents with the Spline pen are not exactly fantastic, but we'll see how we go. So I'm just going to sort of draw this. I'm going to sort of round this round here. Something like that. Cool, and I can hit escape to get rid of that. And then what I'm going to do...
I see you're going to rival my NFT.
Oh, do a little poll at the end. I'm kidding. Right, I'm just going to grab actually all of these. I'm just going to move them in a little. And then this one here, I want to make sure I have my spline selected. Make sure it is on 0 on my X coordinate, my position. And otherwise, if it's not, we'll get that kind of weird mess of geometry like overlapping if it's too far over. Or if it's not over enough, we'll have a weird hole, which we don't want. Cool, so we've drawn our spline. Now all we have to do is grab our generator. So we're going to grab our lathe. And so we can see by the icon, it gives sort of like a nice explanation of what's going to happen. And so I'm going to drop my spline into my lathe. And now we have my vase. And we can even still adjust this if we wanted to, something like that. Cool. So I'm going to bring my shelf back, and then I can do the same thing. I can go back into model mode, and I can place it. Oh, wrong button. I have the spline selected, not the lathe. Important thing, don't move it with the spline selected. Make sure it's the lathe that's selected. And then you can place it on there. And I might even make it a little bit bigger. So I have a rotation band, or I have like a transform cube. So if I grab the transform cube, it's gonna kind of scale up and it's gonna remain placed perfectly on the shelf. Cool. Any questions before I get on to the next thing that we're gonna model?
Not as yet. Someone's asking, can you add a drop shadow? But that's not something that works in 3D as such.
Yeah.
You could turn on ambient occlusion.
Ambient occlusion.
In the yeah, if you just want to turn on ambient occlusion.
So I'll do my little interactive render region, so just so we can see it.
I was going to say you don't even need to do that. You can turn it on directly into the viewport.
Not true. So there we go. C4D is equivalent of a drop shadow.
There we go. There's a couple of different ways. So you can turn it off there and turn off the interactive render region, which is it's fine for rendering, but also if you go to just options and SSAO, and that will just give you a little bit of helps you see stuff a bit better.
Yeah, let's leave that on then. That's quite cool. Cool, right, okay, so now we're gonna let's make this the lava lamp. Because what we're gonna do, we're actually gonna use a reference image for this. And so if you're ever modeling things inside of Cinema 4D, you might find that you might wanna use a reference image directly inside of the software. And this can help you when it comes to modeling. And that's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna use one, and it's just one that I took off Google purely for this session. So what I'm going to do, again, I like to work a lot in the front view when I'm sort of doing things like this. And inside of any of your views, you can come to View and Configure, or the shortcut is Shift-V. So if I hit Configure, we have a bunch of different options in here. And one of them is back. And back allows us to add an image to the back of kind of this viewport. And so what I can do, I can hit my 3 dots. And as we can see, I've got my lava lamp image here. So I'm just going to open that. And it's going to be super big. So let me just pull this down. Maybe like that big. And then again, I'm going to switch my shelf off just so it's not in the way. Cool. And so what we can do, we can use this reference image now, and we can create our geometry using it. And it's kind of a nice little kind of trick. And so what I'm going to do, I know that I'm going to use the Loft generator for this. So I'm going to put a whole bunch of circle splines inside of the Loft to create this, this shape. And so I'm going to do it in 3 different parts. So I'm going to do the first part slow, and then I'll do the rest of it relatively quickly because it's the same process. So what I'm going to do, let me just come out. I'm going to grab myself a circle spline. It's going to be up here, and it's going to be huge. And my plane, so like the orientation of my circle spline is wrong. So I actually want it to be XZ. Yeah, that's right. And I also want it to be a load smaller. So let's put it on 3 for now. I'll press S to focus on that selected thing. And I'm just going to put it all the way to the top. So I'm going to do this top sort of silver bit first. So if I come in, what I can do, I'm going to position my first circle spline right on the top, and I'm going to hold T just to shrink it down. And now I'm going to grab my axis handle, and I'm going to duplicate a bunch of circle splines and have them match the size of this reference image. So I'm going to command click and I'm going to pull this down, and I'm going to hold T to scale it up, and I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to keep doing this until I have pretty much the whole shape made out of circle splines. So let me do this again. I'm not going to go crazy with it. I'm just going to sort of leave it maybe like that. And so we can see we now have a whole load of circle splines. So I've used 7. And now if we come in here, we can see sort of that these circle splines are making up this shape here. And so now what I can do, I can grab my loft, I can grab all my circle splines, and I can drop them into my loft. And we've now turned those splines into the geometry, and that's matching this pretty perfectly. And so now all I need to do is the same thing. So I'm actually going to duplicate this last circle spline, but I'm going to pull it out of the loft. And I'm now going to shrink it down a little bit. I'm just going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to do this bit a little bit quicker. So normally I'd be, a lot more careful and probably have it a lot more detailed, but purely for this, I just want to do it as quickly as possible for you guys to see how kind of easy it is to build with the loft and build with a reference image. So I'm going to grab my loft again, and this time I want to grab this bunch of circle splines and drop that in there. And then again, I'm going to grab the final one just for this kind of third area down here. Let's pop that in there. As I'm doing this, Matt, are there any questions that anyone has?
Nope.
No, I can. Oh, I can fill.
That's right, you're nearly there.
I'm very nearly there. This is doing this as quickly as I possibly can. It's probably not going to be as detailed as it probably should be, but hey ho. Right, and for the final time, grabbing my loft and I'm dropping those in there. Now let's have a look at what this looks like.
Lava lamp.
So now we have our lava lamp. And so as we can see, it's not kind of like the most detailed, but hey, I would have normally spent a little bit more time on this, and I'm sure you guys can if you're building this from scratch or following along later. Cool. So if we switch our shelf back on, what we can do, we can grab our individual loft elements and highlight all of them. And we can grab our place tool. And now we can grab this and we can put this on top of here. And I might just shrink this down a little bit, it's a bit too big. I've got to put that there.
Can you quickly re-show the background image, please? How to do that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so what you do, so come to the specific kind of view that you want. And so for me, it was the front view. So I've got my front view here and just enlarge that. And then you come over to view, then configure or shift V. And then that will take you to all your settings for your viewport. And there's a tab that's titled back. And then you can add an image inside of this thing here. And then we can always switch it on or off if it kind of gets in the way, or just clear it out.
Perfecto, thank you.
No worries. Right, so what's next? What's next? Let's build this. So we've got 15 minutes. So yeah, we're good. So let's build this bottom little kind of a bit of a neon sign going on, which is going to use our sweep. So what we can do, first things first, we are going to grab sort of like that back plate, which was just really simply a cube. So let me shrink this down and pull this in. I'm just sort of going to eyeball this maybe. Oh, wrong one, that one there. Cool. Right, now we need to get ourselves a text spline. So again, you can have it saying whatever you want. I just wanted to have the word love because I thought it looked kind of cute. So I'm just repositioning this. Right, okay, so the font I went for, so I wanted to find like a nice rounded font, because if you think of like a neon sign, it's sort of like a tube, and so the chances are everything is going to be a bit more rounded anyway. And I have this nice font that's called like Nanito, and I think it's just nice and rounded. I'm just going to write the word love. Cool, so I'm going to make this a little bit smaller just so it fits on this back bit here. Maybe 25 we'll go for. Cool, so as we know, as Matt's shown us, we can use the sweep generator to sweep a spline over or around another spline. And so because I want it to look like a neon tube or a neon sign, I've got my love is my first spline, and then I'm going to use a circle spline to kind of sweep around it, and it's going to make it look like a tube. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab a circle spline, and I want this to be really, really small because my letters in this kind of holding on sign is very small. So I'm going to make this something like 0.2. And then I'm going to grab my sweep. And so I want my text spline in my sweep. And then I need to also put my circle spline in between them. And so now we have our tube. And so we could actually make it a little bit bigger. Should we go maybe 0.4? Cool. So you can see how I saw that AO is having, it's looking a little bit weird at the moment, but hey ho. Right, so let me just put that on back on here. So it looks like a bit of a sign. Cool, and then I'm just going to make my cube a little bit smaller and then move this back in again. And we have our little neon sign. I'm going to grab both my sweep and my cube, and I'm going to place them again on here. I'm just going to rotate it a little bit as well. Cool, so we're getting closer. So Matt's already modeled our dolphin for us. So all I did with that was if I grab my dolphin, I can copy it and paste it. So all I did was I took the same dolphin model that Matt made, and I put it on a cube and then a cylinder to make it look like a bit of an ornament. Okay, cool, right, so.
Everybody needs a dolphin ornament.
I mean, yeah. Right, so let's take a look how we can bring Illustrator files into Cinema 4D. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys in 25 because we have an all new Spline importer. And this kind of, if anyone has done this previously in some of the older versions, you'll see how kind of different it really is now. So Illustrator, I have the Maxon logo. And what I'm going to do, so I have this, it's just sort of like one path that's been filled with this red color, and I'm actually going to add a stroke of 2. And there's a reason for that because there's a load of different things I want to show you in the Spline importer. Cool, so what I'm going to do, so I've got my Maxon logo, which is like a fill, and I've also got my stroke on the outside, and I'm just going to save it. Let's say Maxon logo new, because I think I've already got one. And I'm going to leave it at Illustrator 2020. I'm going to hit OK.
But surely it can't work with that now.
Well, Matt.
We finally moved on from Illustrator 8.
Cool, right, so we've got our logo now. So I'm now in version 25, and I'm just going to drag and drop that file that I just saved, which is my Illustrator file, into Cinema 4D. And we're going to get this Adobe Illustrator import. And so we used to get this, but we didn't get, there's a couple of settings that are a bit different now. The main setting is this create vector object. We want this to be enabled. And now what's going to happen is it's going to come in as geometry. So I'm going to press OK. And then now we have our logo as 3D geometry inside of Cinema 4D. And it even matches the colors for us. And so what's happening? So we have our Maxon logo new.ai, and this is our vector import generator. So we take a look at some of the settings in here. So the first thing to mention is we have the file that it's targeting. And what is so great about this is I can come into Illustrator. I can, let's say, change this to, I love the colors that I have. Change this to a different color, put my stroke back in and go File, Save. Come back into Cinema 4D and then refresh it, and it will refresh your file. So I just changed the color because there was nothing else like exciting I could change. But if you'd made a load of drastic changes to your paths or your fills or anything, you're going to be able to just update it inside of Cinema 4D, which is quite a big deal. That's quite a cool feature.
That is cool. I've got a couple of quick questions on this. Does this only work with Illustrator files? I think this is just the
and PDF as well.
Okay. Someone's asked about affinity files, which I don't know about.
No, this Adobe Illustrator importer, this is what it is. It is AI files, SVG files, and PDF files.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much.
No worries. So we have a couple of different settings in here. So we have what's called a layer offset. For me, it's not going to do anything because I only have one layer, but if we had multiple layers, it would offset each of those layers from one another. We have our extrude depth, and this is basically similar to our normal extrude, but it's all inside of the vector import tool. So I can now extrude and increase the depth of my extrude directly inside of here, which before, actually, you know what? I'll show you what you used to do before to show you how different and how great this actually really is. So, like centering options. Huh?
My old workflow.
Yes. And then we have this sweep stroke. So this is why I added a sweep to my AI file. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see these options. And so we can control the depth of our stroke as well as the width. So the important thing to note with the width of the stroke, 100% is going to be the size that you selected. And so in Illustrator, because I've only got a stroke weight of 2, which isn't loads, 100% is only going to go up to 2. And so I can't go higher than that. It's only ever going to hit that kind of that stroke width. We can control the rounding, which is the rounding of our stroke. So we can see if we come in here, we have some nice rounding going on. We can control our growth. So if I sort of do this, we can have it sort of grow round. And we have an offset as well. So we can move this back and we can increase our depth. We could set that to like 50 as well. And then we have it sort of looking like a bit of like a casing around the edge. And even better, all of this stuff, as you can probably see, has the ability to be keyframed as well. So what if we wanted to get into the actual information inside of the vector import? And we can do that really easily. We can just enable hierarchy. And as soon as I've enabled that, you might have seen we now have this drop down option. And so if I drop these down, everything's put into a null, then everything will be put into its individual layers inside that have come from Illustrator, basically. So I've only got one layer, so I can't show how this shows multiple. If I pull that down, we then have what we've just been learning, which is our normal generators. So if I pull these down, we have our sweep object or our sweep generator with our Maxon spline and our rectangle spline. And then we also have our extrude object and an original spline here. So if I just switch all these off and just leave this spline, you can see this is what we have. And this is how things used to come into Cinema 4D. and they've just been put into all of the things that we could possibly need, but it's now all just accessible inside of this vector import. So back in the day, we used to basically save things out as Illustrator 8. So that's what we had to do. So if you don't have version 25, oh my God, I'm having the worst time with this. I don't want to stroke. Okay. Okay, so if you're on anything pre-25, this is what you would do. So you'd go File, you would go Save, wrong button, Save As, and then let's go Maxon logo, and I'm going to call it AI8, just so I know which one it is. And I'm going to save it, and I'm going to change my version to Illustrator 8, and I'm going to go OK, and it's going to give me a little alert there, and that's cool. And then S24, so I'm deliberately putting this in the older version. I'm going to drag my Maxon logo, Illustrator 8, and we can see we still get our importer, but as you can see, we don't have as many options. I'm going to press OK, and this is how it would come in. That's weird. This is how it would come in for you guys. We can then center it out using our coordinates manager, and I'm just going to make it a load bigger. And so what we would need to do, we can then use this as a normal spline. We can grab our extrude and we can drop it into an extrude, and then we can do like our the normal things that we would do inside of here. So that's how you would do it if you don't have version 25.
But of course, this isn't referencing the original Illustrator file, so you would need to resave out the Illustrator file and re-import if you made any changes to the original file. So, like, that's awesome. Like, that's such a wonderful big leap forward.
Yeah, and I think it's something people have been kind of hoping for
since Illustrator 8.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, so basically all I did was that was how I created these little parts in here, was using that setup that we just had a look at.
Amazing.
I'm very aware that it is
3 minutes too. Look at that. We've actually done it.
Yes. So are there any questions on anything on the Spline importer? Like, I know it's a lot of information all at once.
Lots of people loving it, that's for sure. There were a few quick questions I don't think we may know the answer to.
Okay.
If you were to change the inset of the stroke in Illustrator, whether or not it would change, but I'm not sure we would know. We'd have to play with that ourselves to figure out that. But to be honest, most people are saying that it's really cool and really fun and really enjoying it.
Cool, good. That's good then. Right, yes, I was going to sort of... Oh, no, you go.
Someone has asked, how do you set the first point when you want to animate the spline? But I think we'll have to cover that at another time when we do animation in a week or two's time, I'm afraid.
Oh, yeah, we can do that then, yeah. And then what I'll do, I'll save. So I've got the balloon. I've got a bit of like a balloon text, so we'll do this.
Ah, lovely.
We'll have a look at this another day. But yeah, to create that kind of nice like bubbly text, we'll definitely do that. Either probably animation dynamics, maybe in MoGraph. I mean, I've already been thinking about what to do for that. So right, where is my quick keynote? So just so everyone knows the sort of things that we're going through next week. Week 3. I can't believe that's going to be week 3. This always goes way too quickly, this course.
I know.
So it is going to be all things to do with lighting and materials, and this is going to be inside of standard Cinema 4D. So we're going to look at creating our own materials from scratch. And so if you look on kind of the right hand side, you can see that's the shelf we kind of just made, and that's what we're going to be lighting and building our materials for from scratch. We're also going to look at sort of like standard versus physical or PBR workflows, and what exactly they mean and how we can set things up differently dependent on which workflow we're kind of going for. We're going to look at all things to do with lighting, so kind of like area lights, Umney lights, how we can adjust intensity, lighting with HDRI images, and how and why we would maybe do that. and then also lighting with luminance. And then we're going to look at global illumination, because that's going to be a key thing when we're using like our HDRI images. If we have time, we might touch on a bit of volumetric lighting, but no promises. And as always, there will be a project file ready that will be this complete scene on the right-hand side for you guys to break down and use and, do whatever you want with. And as always, any work that you post, I know a couple of people have been doing it already, feel free to use the hashtag #HowMaxon, and we will, check that out, like tag us in your stuff. We always like to see what you do, whether it's to do with this course or not. It's always interesting what you guys are creating and kind of being a part of your journey as well. That's always like super interesting. Yeah, so, and thanks Matt as well for all your like technical stuff. I feel like I definitely learned a load today as well.
I'm glad, and thank you very much for showing how to make cool stuff out of it all. So that's that again for another week already.
I know, it's crazy. And thank you to everyone who's here with us, like whether you were here last week or whether this was your first week. Like, it's so great having you guys live, as well as anyone who's watching the YouTube recording. Thank you so much. And to all of your questions as well. Like, we love answering them out loud, because definitely whoever's watching the recording, I'm sure they'll be having the same questions as you guys. So it definitely, makes it way more kind of interesting and interactive for us as well. So we appreciate it.
Right, have a good one, guys, and we will see you all next week.
Yes, see you all next week.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.